All right, so welcome to the public meeting for the Crawford County Trail Feasibility Studies. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us this evening to talk about these exciting projects. Before we get started, I have a few quick housekeeping reminders for all of you. You should all currently be muted, and we're going to ask that you remain muted during the presentation portion of the discussion today. Now, that being said, we want it to be really interactive. So if you would like to provide a comment, ask a question, share your perspectives throughout this evening's event, please feel free to either type your question, comment, concern into the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself and share that way. If you have any trouble, please feel free to just unmute yourself and say, I need help, I have a question, or whatever. We're happy to help you along the way. So with that, we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you on this project. So before we get started into the meat and potatoes of this meeting, I'm going to run through a high-level first welcome and introductions, and then I'll do a summary of the agenda. So I'm going to start with these welcome and introductions, then I'll do some project summary, meeting summary, then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. So with that, jump back here. Let's do introductions. Since we've got a smaller group on the call today, I think there's a small enough group that we're going to just go around and introduce everybody. So I'll start with the project team and then some of the project coordinators, and then we'll go from there. So hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Warner-Heyman. I am a traffic engineer with Michael Baker International. I span the world of planning and engineering, sort of in that plan engineering world, and I am the task manager for these studies. I'm now going to hand it off to Brian. Brian, go for it.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll unmute myself here. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Funkhauser, also with Michael Baker, and I'm the contract manager and liaison with the Northwest Pennsylvania Commission. And they're actually the ones who are administering the study as the administrative arm of the Northwest PA RPO, or Rural Planning Organization. So again, thank you for participating in this evening's meeting. Casey?
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Casey Bodager. I'm a transportation planner, also with Michael Baker, and I will be providing support to Jennifer and Brian tonight as we go through tonight's agenda.
Great. Thanks so much, Casey. Travis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I'm Travis Sigel. I'm with the Northwest Commission, and as Brian mentioned, we serve as the Northwest Rural Planning Organization for the Northwest 5 counties of Warren, Forest, Clarion, Crawford, and Venango. We handle all the transportation planning studies over that, and yeah, thank you all for being here and taking time out of your busy days. We appreciate it.
Great, thanks so much. So we're going to go around and continue to introduce some of the other folks on the line, just so that we know who's out there. Ed, let's start with you next.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Ed Eastley. I'm the Vice President of French Creek Recreational Trails. So we manage the Ernst Trail, and we're very interested in continuing to expand both directions.
Great, thanks so much. Tom McClellan, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom McClellan. I'm the Assistant District Executive for Design with PennDOT, and we cover the areas of Crawford, Erie, Forest, Mercer, Venango, and Warren counties. So this is one of our areas, and we work not only with vehicles, we work with bike trails as well. So that's why we're here, to learn more about the study. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Tom. Lindsay, would you like to go next?
Hello, Lindsay DeVito from PennDOT District 1. I'm the district planner there, and I serve on this steering committee.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Peter, would you like to go next?
Hey, sorry about the delay. Peter Oven. I'm a board member with French Creek Recreational Trails.
Great. Thanks so much. Calvin, would you like to go next? Calvin may be muted, may have stepped away for a moment. Jason, would you like to go next?
Sure, and apologies for not being on video. My son and I are sitting here eating dinner, so you don't want to see us eating food. My name is Jason Ramsey. I'm a member of the Meadville City Zoning and Planning Commission, and my son and I are also avid cyclists.
Well, welcome for you and your son. Thank you for joining us. Joyce, would you like to go next?
I'll just chime in. This is Cal. Hello. Does anybody hear me? No. Oh, do we, Ed? Okay.
Yes.
I'm just
Yes.
saying here. Now I've had a real breakthrough over about a 5-year struggle with the Bessemer and Lake Erie that I do have a contract to purchase all the remaining right away they have from Meadville to Conneaut Lake and west there. So we're moving along with that nicely. That's about all I have to say. So we'll we can kind of keep making the connection between the Route 19 and the Conneaut Cellars, and then on west to Pamatooning Drive.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing, Calvin. Hello, everyone. Apologies for dropping off for a moment there. My internet got a little fuzzy. Apologies in advance. Casey, who do we have left? Apologies that hopped off there.
Looks like Roxy just joined us. Roxy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Roxy, Union Township, here to listen.
Great, welcome. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a couple others, Jennifer, if you want to.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. Joyce, did you want another chance to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Joyce Bergnoli. I live in Conneaut Lake, and I'm just interested to hear what plans you have in store for the area. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Joseph and Sharon Shalito also on the line. If you guys want to unmute and introduce yourselves.
Hi, we're just living in Conneaut Lake and just trying to get some information on where the trail is going to go and just along those lines. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. I believe we've got everyone here. Now what I'll do is walk through a quick summary of the agenda. So our agenda for tonight is I will provide a quick project summary, as I noted. Then we'll go into a summary of the meeting itself. We'll talk about our public survey results. We'll talk about those lovely concepts and existing conditions for the various areas of the project. And then we'll talk through follow-ups and next steps. So first, we'll start out with that project summary. So as Brian noted, Northwest RPO is funding this study to develop concepts for the proposed Crawford County Trail extensions and connections, and to further examine those barriers that would need to be addressed in order to accommodate active transportation modes on those trail connections. So overall, the results of this study, the plan is to use them to help and allow for trail groups and counties and municipalities to pursue grant funding, pursue assistance, and generally assist with the transportation planning process. Right? The two areas that this study looks at is the extension of the Ernst Trail or Shryock-Bailey Connector Trail up to the Bicentennial Park in Meadville, which we're colloquially terming the Meadville extension portion of the project, right? And then the other portion is a new trail connection from Conneaut Lake to Linesville Borough. So the Conneaut to Linesville extension. So those are the two areas that we'll be talking about this evening. The overarching goal for this meeting tonight is to share those draft concepts with you, the draft concepts for addressing those trail areas, right? And to hear your thoughts and feedback on those draft concepts. So ultimately, we really want to hear your perspectives, what you think about these draft ideas. So the process that we're going to go through is we'll talk about some existing conditions, we'll walk through those draft concepts, and then we'll open it up for your questions. So as I noted in the agenda summary, we'll then end the meeting with some information about next steps for this project. So with that, before we dive in, are there any questions from the group about the meeting goals or meeting process for tonight? Right, I think we're good. So with that, Casey, I'm going to have you go next with the survey results. So I'm happy to run the screen. Would you prefer to share your slides?
Oh, you can run the screen. That'd be great. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm going to provide everyone with a quick overview of the survey results, what we heard from the survey that was conducted earlier in the project. So to provide a quick overview of what our responses looked like, we had a total of 147 people respond to the survey. And of those respondents, we had 80% of them as Crawford County residents and trail users. So that's good to hear that they're, largely local area residents and users interested in the project. And of that total respondents, 66% of them were concentrated in a lot of our study areas, including Conneaut Lake, Linesville, and Meadville. And of course, we can't forget the remaining 20%. And these folks are residents and trail users outside of Crawford County. And you can see there, a lot of them are still within Pennsylvania, but we also had some folks from out of state interested as well. So the counties that you see here, Allegheny, Beaver, Erie, Mercer, and Venango, all expressed interest in the trail and wanted to provide their feedback. And we also heard from some residents in Trumbull County, Ohio, who frequent trails in Pennsylvania. Next slide. So the first question that we're asking these folks is, what are the 3 features that you most value when you're using the trail network in Crawford County? So at the end of the day, all of our respondents valued a trail that is scenic, separated, and safe. So scenic, they're immersed in nature and, they're able to be, within the environment. Separation, it's not along a roadway. They like being separated from high traffic areas. And safe, they want to make sure if there's any crossings, those crossings are safe. They want to make sure when they're on the trail, they feel safe and secure while using the trail, even if it is also off-road. And of course, just because these are the top 3 that came out as a result of the survey, that doesn't downplay, obviously, the importance of the remaining factors, including maintenance and cleanliness, connectivity, crossings, and visibility. Next slide, please. So we asked survey respondents what their vision was for the extension of the trail. And what they said was they preferred a trail that opens the door for further network connectivity for both recreation and transportation. So not only are they in support of these potential new connections, but they also would like to see them take that one step further, and they'll open the door to connect more communities to a trail network. Also, they say that they would be a valuable asset to connecting folks that may not have access to a car, that may want to rely on the trail for transportation to get from point A to point B. Additionally, they want a trail that is accessible by all modes, including biking, walking. Some people want to bring their dogs. Some people want to, practice for marathons, and they want to go as far as they possibly can. So they also want to be able to get to the trailhead safely as well. So not just accessing the trail itself, but also getting to the trailheads. Some people want to be able to walk to a trailhead rather than drive to one. So they want to make sure the connectivity fits to be able to access. They also are interested in a trail that offers a safe, accessible, and quiet way to connect with nature and promote healthy habits. So they value being in nature as a way to de-stress, disconnect. And like I said, some people want to promote, or they're promoting the healthy habits. They value healthy exercise and more opportunities for that. And I think an extension of the trail would do that. And finally, a trail that attracts visitors and stimulates local economies. They want people to be coming into the area, patronizing local businesses, and stimulating the local economy. And with vision and all the good things that people want to get out of the trail, there's also some areas of concern. Number one being maintenance responsibility, making sure that maintenance responsibility is identified for maintaining and keeping the trail clean of debris and safe. Second, security and surveillance. They want to make sure that there's no illicit activity happening. They want to make sure that people are following proper trail etiquette, and they think some security and surveillance would be a little bit of a concern, but something to think about as the trail could come to fruition. Additionally, signage and wayfinding, making sure people can not only find the trail and access the trail, but again, letting people know proper trail etiquette and other components like that. On-road safety. This was another big one that came up. If the trails were to use any portion of an on-road, any on-road segments, they want to make sure that there's separation or improvements implemented to ensure that being along the road is safe. And right now there are some areas where they feel like, that could be a concern. And finally, property owner buy-in. For some of the off-road alignments you're going to see here, some people were concerned about making sure the property owners are 100% on board and making sure that the alignment would follow, their wishes and respect those. So I believe that is all I have. So I am more than happy to take questions if anybody has any at this time.
Are there any questions about what we've shared so far about the survey results? Questions or comments, right? All right, hearing none, we will drive right along into the next portion of our agenda for today. Thank you so much, Casey, for providing us with that summary. All right, so on to the meat and potatoes of the conversation today. So for the Meadville extension, we'll walk through some of the existing conditions, show you some of the draft concepts, and then open it up for discussion. So I'm going to open up, pull this over here. So the Ernst Trail extension into Meadville. What are we really talking about? We are talking about the Ernst Trail and Shryock-Bailey Connector Trail, the extension of where that ends up and into the Meadville area. So let's scroll down here. So from the end of the trail up and into the Meadville area up to Bicentennial Park. That's really what we're talking about here. The current Ernst Trail obviously has some wonderful facilities. The Shryock-Bailey Connector Trail has some wonderful facilities, very much in nature. It transitions right over up into the Kirktown area with behind the Smucker's facility and up into the neighborhood there. The trail currently tees off towards the bottom here of this little neighborhood. And there is the Kerrtown Community Center located there, right just past the Mercer Street Bridge. There's an open green space. So these are some of the, let's say, key locations that may be of interest to some folks, right, who may be using the trail. There's also the railroad depot, and of course, as noted, Bicentennial Park. Right. So the concepts that we are going to be presenting here today, we have broken into, let's say, the maybe shorter term concepts and longer term concepts. So the first ones I'm going to be walking through are the shorter term concepts, right? The ones that are more easily implementable in a shorter time frame. So for these concepts for a connection, they travel along generally along the road and a portion off the road. So what does that truly mean? So concept A here travels along Shippen Street up to Pennsylvania Avenue, travels down across the Mercer Street Bridge, and then up along the parking lot there, along the rail line, along the gravel area, over the old bridge, up to Poplar, and then up to Bicentennial Park. And that's sort of the concept. Now, the difference between concept A and concept B is this portion right here along Pennsylvania Avenue and across the Mercer Street Bridge. The difference between those two is that in concept A, the on-road facilities would be a share-o situation, and I'll show some graphics for that in just a second. In concept B, it would be a shoulder bike lane situation. So what does that look like? Yes, and apologies, also concept C, which is going to be a two-way bicycle facility on the edge there. All right, so got some great graphics here. I'm sure there's a lot to take in here, so I'm going to walk through them one by one. Essentially, right now, the Pennsylvania Avenue has about 31.7 feet of right-of-way, roadway width to work with, right? So if we were to say, okay, a Sharrow on-road facility would look like this. You would put the Sharrows painted on the roadway, and you'd put some share the road signage up. We wouldn't be moving the center line, it would stay as it currently is. In concept B, where we've got bike lanes on the shoulders there, the center line would shuffle just a little bit over to have a 6.2 foot bike lane. On that western side, you'd have two 10-foot lanes and then 5.5 feet on the eastern side. You might be wondering, why didn't we just split it right down the middle and make it even all the way across? On the western side of Pennsylvania Avenue, there are gutters. And so as a bicyclist, that can be a little challenging to navigate, which is why we've given a little more room for that western side bicycle lane. All right, so that's concept A and concept B. Moving along to concept C, this one's a little bit different. This one shuffles the vehicle travel lanes off to the western side. You'd have one that's a little bit wider, right, because of that gutter line, 11.7 feet. You'd have a 10-foot lane. Then you'd have 2-foot separation, painted separation buffer, and then 8 feet of a two-way bicycle facility. As you can probably imagine, because this road has 10,000 average daily traffic, the vehicles per day moving along it, and there's a decent number of trucks. It is a bus route as well. The additional separation of B and C may be more comfortable for those who are less comfortable being in there with the traffic. So those are the three concepts for the short-term on-road type facilities for that section. I'm going to show a few more pictures and then we'll open it up for questions, comments, concerns, things you'd like to talk about, your ideas, right? So let me show some pictures just to sort of reinforce the different concepts we're talking through. So concept A, these are all sort of the same concept of a shared road facility where you have Sharrows and a share the road signage, right? You can see this is what it would look like on Pennsylvania Avenue, Mercer Avenue. In concept B, we've got these shoulder bike lanes. You can see this is what it would look like in these different areas. And then concept C, this is what it would look like in those different areas. All right, so with those concepts shared, before I go into the longer term concepts, are there any questions, comments, concerns about what we've shown so far? Thoughts?
Hi, this is Lindy. Can you guys hear me?
You can.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just had a question. I also do bike ped coordination at the district for PennDOT. I noticed that on concept C, that you're showing 8 feet for the 2 lanes, bike lanes. We are trying to push at least 5 feet, especially when people are, and the wider the better. But I realize there's smaller room there. But just wanted to bring that up. That might be something to consider in that area. Just with passing and things that might not be,
You're cutting out just a little bit there, Lindsay.
Road, what we would be looking for.
Apologies, at least on my end, you're cutting out just a little bit there, but I appreciate you bringing up the 10-foot. Yes, 10 feet for a two-way is the standard. My understanding is that in certain tight areas, you can use an 8-foot width for a short amount of distance because it is just this like couple block portion. It would absolutely need to be part of the conversation, whether that would be an acceptable approach, right? But yes, appreciate you bringing that up. 10, it is tighter than, let's say, would be ideal for sure. Yeah, really appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, concerns on these concepts that we're sharing here today?
Hi, this is Ed. Just along the same lines, I think last time we were talking about whether or not we could have a bike lane going both directions without a physical barrier. Do we know any more about that, or is?
Yeah, so my understanding is that you can have an on-road facility, but you could also put up bollard style delineators, plastic tubes basically along that barrier separation to provide a little more separation. Yeah. Thank you, Ed. And Peter, I see you've turned on your camera. Do you have a comment to share?
Yeah, I think concept C is pretty interesting, and one that I didn't realize was kind of on the table, because I don't think, is there any example in Northwest Pennsylvania where concept C type of facility has been implemented?
No, it's a really great question. I don't know off the top of my head if there are any other examples in this area. I think based on Lindsay's comment that 10 feet is probably preferred. It is on the table, but it would need to be cleared right through PennDOT. Obviously, this is a PennDOT facility. So.
You mentioned that these were short-term solutions. So in the case of PennDOT reconstructing 102, you would have other ideas. Is that the case?
Well, so actually, I appreciate you bringing in, and you're giving me a great transition into the next concept. So
one other question I had was,
okay.
For those three, is snow removal something that you've considered, and how trail users could use the trail in the winter?
A great question. Maintenance for any type of pedestrian or bicycle facility is absolutely going to need to be a part of the conversation. In these types of shoulder scenarios, maintenance on this roadway would need to be a part of the conversation, right? Yeah, it's a good question. Good point.
This is Lindsay again. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, I switched to my cell phone. Sometimes when I'm watching on my iPad, it does not work very well. Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I believe I heard you saying, yes, the 4 feet, yes, you can go down to that. It's just the preference. You do not have to have anything between. It's also something some people like, but it's not required. It actually would make the space a little even feel more confined, and that might not be something people like either. When you're talking about what has been done anywhere in Northwest PA, are you talking about the 2 lanes on one side?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. In the city of Sharon, on SR 518, I did a project, and they have bike lanes on the one side of the street. At some point, they do have it on both sides, but it does switch over to the going both ways on the one side, and they do use like bike boxes and things like that.
Thanks so much for sharing, Lindsay. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
We really appreciate it. So to circle back to Peter's other question about the long-term options. So the reason I use the term short-term and long-term is because based on the recreational plans for this area, the long-term option was to have an off-road option, right? To connect the trail where it is currently off-road up to Bicentennial Park, something more along what's being shown on the screen here. The original, or I should say, the ones that are expressed, my understanding, in the recreational plans that are currently out here for this area is more this type of connection where it would run along the river, over the Mercer Street Bridge, and then along the river up to Bicentennial Park. There are some other potential routes you could go. If you were to try to connect to the little railroad park that's over here, right, there could be a bridge across that area and then traveling along and up this way. Obviously, a bridge means a lot more money, right? And funding required to do that, but this could be another option. Yeah, so thoughts, questions, concerns, perspectives on the future concepts of an off-road facility.
I'll ask a question.
Go for it,
the,
Peter.
the idea of the bridge is super exciting, and we've bounced it around before, but did you assess the feasibility of a bridge at any location, and was that the optimal location in terms of the floodway and other types of impacts for a bridge, or did you not analyze that?
It's a great question. At this stage, we have not done that level of analysis yet. The location was selected just based on where the trail is teeing into Shippen Street, and that the property on the other side is, my understanding, is a public property, which makes it a little more, let's say, feasible. So the floodway or waterway conditions were not a part of this level of the study.
Okay.
Yeah, good question, Peter. I see Roxy's got her hand up. Go for it, Roxy.
Just my personal opinion, to keep more with the trail concept, the future, anything that avoids the shared roadway is much preferable to the roadway, especially if you want to enjoy it with small children, walking next to traffic, biking next to traffic, etc. So just in my opinion, just to keep with the absolute concept of a trail, anything off-road is much preferable.
Really appreciate you sharing those perspectives, Roxy. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my understanding based on the recreational planning documents I've seen. It very similar reasoning and rationale for why an off-road would be sort of the ultimate goal. The thought is that because when we're talking about these off-road facilities, we're talking about having to purchase right-of-way and property right access, right? That it can take significantly longer sometimes to do that. And
Right.
so the thought is that those other options could be something in the interim until then. Yeah, really appreciate
for sure.
it. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Did someone else have their hand up?
I'll say, let's do Jason and then we'll bump back to you, Peter. All right, go for it, Jason.
Just real briefly, just from my son and I bike through this a number of times, and as far as road connectivity there, I'll say the Mercer Street Bridge is a bit forbidding for bicyclists, just because of that. You'll note that concrete barrier between that and the pedestrian right away. That if we were going to select a portion of this to be on road, if we can avoid the bridge is beautiful, but it's not a particularly friendly place for bicyclists, no matter what you do with that.
Really appreciate you sharing that, Jason. One option, didn't share this yet, but one option is that you could, if you were to do, let's say, shoulder bike lanes or share the road facilities, you could build in some sort of let's call it an off-ramp for bicyclists if they wanted to, let's say, get out of the roadway area and move on to the shoulder and walk their bike across the bridge instead. There's certain signage and features you can add in to sort of help communicate and facilitate that. Or you can put up signage like bicycle may use full lane, but as Jason noted, it's a little tight on that bridge and may not be as comfortable. Really appreciate you sharing that perspective. All right, Peter, go for it.
In terms of option C of the short-term options, I was wondering if you had considered like how much right-of-way PennDOT owns and whether the sidewalk could be converted to a shared use path in a larger reconstruction project, or are there technical reasons why you couldn't like blow through the sidewalk and part of people's front yards that are in the public right-of-way to create more of a shared use path separate from the traffic?
It's a great question. So one of the immediate things that we see when we're out here is that there are utilities in that area. So the utilities are right here, maybe a couple feet off of the line, and they run through on both sides, very close to the edge of the roadway. So when we're talking about having to move and coordinate the move of utility lines, it just increases the amount of cost and the amount of time required for that. But it is a thought, right? That could be an option. I think if we're talking about short-term, long-term, would it be better from a long-term perspective to go with maybe a more scenic route versus investing the money into the closer to the road facility? But appreciate you bringing up that idea. Lindsay, I see you've got your hand up. Go for it, Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that. I don't know the right of way with here, off the top of my head. However, we do have multimodal funding that goes up to like $3 million. That, in this sense, since there is a lot of connectivity involved, and you're extending, and then you have further plans and things like that, this could definitely be a potential for that funding. It is a 70-30, so it's a 30% match. But during that, you could discuss, different options and do different things with utilities if possible and stuff. But yes, that is a headache to do with the utilities. As far as changing the sidewalk to, a multimodal pathway, it's definitely something that can be looked at again with the right of way. And during our TA projects and our federally funded grant projects, and also the multimodal projects, we we have done right of way plans where they've went in and they've negotiated and acquisitions and all that, to get that a little bit wider. But I would suggest in that instance that someone would talk and just say, like, maybe just throw it out there. Anybody interested in, having this? Because if you have everybody basically stating no, it's not probably going to happen. It's just going to be a bad mark for the county or whomever, is doing it. But we also have options as far as including funds that are grant funds from another, from PennDOT or another source into our projects. It could be almost like an also plan type of a thing that could assist with some of the funding and different things. When you do environmental clearance, you do it once, you're not going to do it twice, as long as it's the same section. Different things can be talked about there. We're doing one of those in Franklin right now. So just a few things to bring up, and we can talk about that offline too, if you want, Jennifer.
Yeah, really appreciate you bringing that up, Lindsay, that pairing those projects together can really help facilitate both projects, right, to move forward. Yeah, really appreciate that. Anything else on these? I see Roxy, you still have your hand up. I think that might be from earlier, or do you have another comment to share? I think it might have been from earlier. Right. So really appreciate you all sharing your perspectives on the Meadville extension concepts that we've shared with you today. We'll definitely take that feedback and those comments back as we put together the report on the various draft concepts and include your commentary on that. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. All right. So with that, we are now going to jump to the Conneaut Lake to Linesville portion of the project. So as a reminder, let me grab my here. We are looking in this area of Crawford County from connecting Conneaut Lake to Linesville with a trail connection. The current facilities in that area, there is the obviously Pymatuning State Park Spillway Trail. There is a Erie Extension Canal Towpath Trail up in the Linesville area. There are some wonderful facilities in Conneaut Lake area, obviously Conneaut Lake itself, but also Fireman's Beach, the Ice House Park. We noted Silver Shores Restaurant, we've heard is a very popular local go-to, and obviously downtown Conneaut Lake Borough itself. The concepts that we're going to be sharing today. The first one is I'm going to go through the actual Conneaut Lake up to Linesville potential route options, and then I'll do a deep dive into the crossing in Conneaut across 322. So that's sort of the order of events for today. So what we are presenting is potential routes for a trail connection between Conneaut Lake and Linesville, ideally connecting into the Spillway Trail extension over in Linesville. So we have three overarching concepts to connect those areas. The first concept is an off-road and along the railroad type facility. So this one would be primarily off of the roadway and following along the railroad, right? The next concept that we have would be an off-road facility, and then instead of following along the railroad, it would follow along the property lines, right? So a little more direct, maybe, let's say, right? And then the final one is the on-road concept. So this is an on-road route that would follow lower volume, relatively lower speed roadways from Conneaut Lake up to the Spillway Trail. So I'm going to dive in to each of those concepts and walk through what specifically we're actually talking about for each of those concepts, and then we'll open it up and sort of hear some perspectives. So for the off-road and railroad alignment, this one would be an ADA accessible, right, gravel trail traveling along the railroad line, and then adjacent to the active railroad line, there would be a small portion of sharrows on this very small neighborhood street, and then it would connect in with the gravel trail to the Spillway Trail extension. That is the off-road and railroad alignment. The next potential follows once again along that old railroad bed off-road, and then it starts off-road along the property line. There's a small portion of roadway where it is on sharrow, then it is off-road again, sharrow, off-road, sharrow, and then off-road up to the trail. All right, the last one follows along Aldina up to tuning, and then along the road, there's a small portion of off-road facility, and then back onto the road with a share the road scenario for that portion. Now you may be wondering, okay, well, how did we pick this road, these roadways specifically? The PennDOT District 1 ran a district-wide bicycle study, and they performed analysis of the bicycle level of traffic stress. And they went and they rated each of those roadways in the area, or any of the roadways in the area, based on the amount of stress that a bicyclist might feel. So for example, a bicycle level of stress 1 is much more comfortable than a bicycle level of stress 4, which a 1 would be shown in a light green, a 4 is shown in that dark red color. So as you can see, if we're talking about connecting from Conneaut Lake to Linesville, many of the major connections, the more, let's say, direct connections, are that red, much more stressful roadway facility, which is why we opted to go as much as possible with the lower stress options where it's a more comfortable share the road experience. That is how those particular roadways were selected. So with that, I'm going to scroll back up to the very top. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, perspectives you would like to share about these 3 concepts, conceptual alignments that we've talked about here today? Open it up to the group. I know it's a lot to absorb, so if you need to take it all in, right?
I'll throw in a question there.
Go for it, Peter.
Regarding the off-road and railroad alignment, did you assess kind of the realisticness of paralleling Canadian National's rail line?
It is a good question in the sense that you would absolutely have to have a high level coordination with them. And there are some trails out there that do butt up against an active rail line. There are very specific design features you need to consider for something like that. Often it's fencing, right, or some sort of offset, and the amount of offset is a little bit higher. So if we're talking about, realistically feasible, the on-road and the off-road and along property lines is probably more feasible than the light blue along the railroad line, relatively, right? It's a good question.
And where do you cross the railroad in that first setup?
Yeah, so in this first setup, you'd actually stay on the southern side of the railroad the entire way up until this portion. So let me pull up the Google map so you can actually see what talking about here. So here we are. Here's the rail line coming down. There is this crossing here. This is the location that would likely be the crossing, since it is already a low volume road crossing. That would be the location. Otherwise, it would stay on the southern side and sort of run up against it. Good question. Other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you, Peter, for being the first one to throw one out there. Nothing else?
Hi, this is Ed. Just a question on the Girton Road possibility. What would that be? Just signs along the side of the road, you know, share the road signs? Is that all that would be?
That option would be share the road signs likely along the side. You could opt to go with pavement markings as well, but I think based on the facility, the share the road signage would probably be sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Good question. I see Joseph and Sharon have your hands up. Go for it.
Oh, yes. On these plans here, I'm not looking too good at the maps, but do any of these plans butt up to any of the Pennsylvania Game Commission properties? Is that where they're talking about using these rail lines, especially down through the area off of 6, which goes into, I think that's their duck hunting area. Is there a problem using up along the end of the Game Commission lands, or can they go ahead and use it?
You're talking in this area here? Or
Yeah, anything off of Route 6 from Brooks Road over to Canal Road, or, you know, actually between the area between 285 and 6 is a lot of that is Game Commission, and some of that area is the area that's closed, you know, for the goose management that nobody's allowed into.
So this spot right now, the Pymatuning Area Extension Canal Towpath Trail ends right at the edge of that. This portion here, my understanding, is already in the process of being planned and constructed. So that pink portion, I think this is what you're talking about. This pink portion here is, should have clarified, not a part of this project. We're connecting into that.
The area I was thinking about was where the trail ends over there by the Fish Commission land and the Crooked Paddle. If you go back, heading back towards the spillway and all that, they're just going to maintain that whole thing for the spillway trail. That's where they're going to use.
So at least the plans that sorry, go for it.
Did you want me? It's a project that I was the PM for and designed. Trail. So basically what they're doing on that project is there's a parking lot, a gravel parking lot right across from the spillway. They are fixing that up, putting, you know, to make that a little bit nicer. So and more sectioned off, I guess, so that people will have the multimodal path. It does run down the current pathway on Hartstown Road, I believe that's what that's called.
Yes.
Runs down there, ends up going behind by the fish hatchery, on their property. They have some fencing and things going up so that it's actually by some of the ponds, I guess, where they're spawning their fish and things. The project was done by DCNR. They're the sponsor. We did end up working with the Game Commission, and there were some stipulations, but they were totally fine with it. Just had to have some, you know, the trail that we were working on was not necessarily for like, you know, snow machines or, you know, four-wheelers, things like that. You know, we're putting a new bridge in the water behind where the school is. And we had to get school property, you know, different things like that. So it did take a while, I'm not gonna lie. You know, but we're putting the old the old Meserole Truss Bridge in there, and they're revamping that. So the project ended up being pretty expensive, you know, around like $3 million or so for just that to construction. But we did work with the Game Commission and things, and we didn't have any problems. And that is set to finish this year.
I mean, the area that I was talking about, if they come over from Route 6, basically the area behind the Crooked Paddle, which you had mentioned, that bridge behind the school and in there, that's the old railroad bed. But I had heard there were some problems that they thought they were just going to use that because there is a parking area in there that's on game commission land that they thought they were going to use, but it's only open, during the hunting season. They closed the gates all closed up until the hunting season, and then it's only opened on certain days. I just didn't know if they were going to try to still go through there or not.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not exactly sure which portion you're talking about, but happy to follow up with you afterwards and make sure that we note the specific location that you're talking about.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. At this point, we'll now dive into the specific crossing in Conneaut Lake Borough itself. So we are essentially working to figure out how to get the trail across 22 and over to Ice House and Fireman's Beach. So just for perspective, we've got about 950 feet right between the signalized intersection and sort of where the trail is estimated to be coming into that area. The speed limits are posted at 45 miles per hour heading eastbound, right outside of the firehouse, and 25 heading into town at that location. All right, and this is what the roadway itself looks like. We are at a portion where the roadway is necking down from 2 lanes in each direction on the east down to, 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane, 2-way left turn lane, to a 2-lane without a turn lane. All right, so we've got 2 concepts to present to you today. The first concept is to run the trail along the southern side of the roadway in a 2-way bicycle scenario, very similar to what we shared in the Meadville extension area, but with a slightly different, let's say, cross section, right? So the roadway in this section, particularly this portion where it's 2 lanes coming down, the thought would be to extend that 25 mile per hour zone further to the east, reduce those vehicle lanes, push the lane reduction further to the east, and install that 2-way protected bicycle lane facility, right, 2-way cycle track on the southern side of Water Street. All right, and then the crossing would occur at the intersection itself. So the trail will come up and then it would run along the roadway down to the intersection. Bicyclists would then dismount, cross as a pedestrian into Ice House Park. They are then at the location. I've noted here what the cross sections would look like at various portions of the roadway. So in this portion, we have a fairly wide wide roadway, where you would have room for shoulders and the travel lanes and wide buffer, and then the bicycle lanes on the far side, right? Once it gets closer to town, as you're sort of necking down into that area, it would look more like this style where you sort of transition down from 6 foot to 5 foot. The buffer could transition down and the shoulders would transition down. Right, so that is concept A. The second concept that we are presenting here today is a crossing at where the trail would come in And then there would be a bicycle lane on each side of the roadway for each direction. It would be a protected bicycle facility. Very much like the other options, you would then recommend extending that 25-mile-per-hour zone, right? You'd be reducing the vehicle lane width. There would be some sort of protected facility, and there would need to be some sort of mid-block crossing feature at that location. So here is an example of a trail crossing in Harrisburg. I'll zoom in. Oops, excuse me. Zoom in a little bit here so you can see what it looks like. There's an overhead warning signage with buttons that pedestrians can push to cross the roadway there. So those are the two concepts that we're presenting. Lindsay, I see you've got your hand up. Go for it, Lindsay.
Okay, so the word mid-block crossing, or the words, definitely piqued my interest. I have been in discussions with it since the very first phase of the Conneaut Lake project. That was about, this is another one of my projects for the PM stuff. Now Water Street, is that the one that where the winery is? I'm just trying to figure out where the mid-block crossing is trying to be.
A roadway. I apologize, that might be a typo on this slide there.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure.
Yep, it's a typo. Apologies, everyone.
Okay. Okay, so if we're talking about where the winery is that where you're talking about though? Okay, we've discussed that internally many times throughout this process of with Conneaut Lake and their whole concept plan. That's probably not going to happen. I know with maintenance and different things, the refuge island was not something that they really wanted. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not going to say that it's 100% no, but it isn't looked at favorably by PennDOT.
Appreciate you sharing those perspectives, Lindsay. It's helpful to be able to share that when we're noting the concepts, right? To say this one is not as favorable based on
well, speeds and things like that as well. I know that there was a discussion about they wanted Conneaut Lake Borough had talked about changing it down to like 2 lanes further back so that they could reduce speeds, you know, traffic calming, all of those things. But talking with our traffic engineers at the district, because they were brought into the involvement with that, that was, we don't like the mid-block crossings, you know, for various reasons. They also brought up the fact that if there's a winery there and there's people crossing the road and, you know, things like that, you know, it could cause issues, you know, different things like that. So just wanted to bring that up, that it was looked at, but that might not be the most favorable option. For
yeah, appreciate you sharing those perspectives, Lindsay. It sounds like the A concept may be more favorable, at least from PennDOT's perspective. See, Tom, you've got your hand up. Go for it, Tom.
Yeah, can you go back to that Google map image of the area right by the fire station, by the Conneaut Lake outlet? There's a bridge there. If you zoom in a little bit, there, right there, exactly. Just for the good of the order, just a comment. When PennDOT did that bridge, we made it a lot wider, knowing that in the future there could be a bicycle lane or bikeways there. We beefed up the, I don't know if we beefed up both sides, but we definitely beefed up one of the shoulders where it can actually have a raised bike path on it. So, you know, again, a 10-foot path to separate, you know, the bikes a little bit from the traffic in that area. So I'm not sure if it's both sides of the bridge or just the one. I'd have to look at the bridge plans, but I was talking to someone today in our office about this project. Oh, yeah, you got it right there. Looks like so. But yeah, just so everybody's aware, there, you know, we do some planning. You know, if we know about things coming down the road in the future, you know, we can plan and work together with the grants that Lindsay mentioned. So again, just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention here tonight.
I appreciate that, Tom. Very helpful. Thank you. All right. Any other comments, questions, perspectives to share? So that's all that we have for you as far as draft concepts to share. I really appreciate everybody sharing their perspectives, asking questions, right? Providing your 2 cents on the various concepts that we're presenting. So now what I'm going to do is close out with some information about next steps. So what are we doing with these concepts next? Well, first of all, we are going to take tonight's meeting recording and the information, and we will be posting it to the website, the project website. We will then allow for others to provide their public comments online through Wednesday, June 8th. So if you know of anyone in your organizations or in your community or your neighbors, right, who wanted to come to the meeting but just weren't able to make it into their schedule, there is an opportunity for them to provide additional comments. So please feel free to encourage others to submit thoughts and comments and perspectives through that venue through Wednesday, June 8th. Once we get through that process, right, and receive feedback from everyone, we will be finalizing these detailed concepts and what we're calling an action plan, i.e. how would you move forward with the sort of most favorable of the concepts that were presented, right? We will be drafting up reports, formal reports for those concepts and the action plan. We'll then have a second public meeting where we will share what those final concepts and recommendations are. We're hoping for the 3rd week of June based on our time frame, and we will then be presenting the final results to the Northwest RPO at the end of June. So that's sort of the time frame from where we are now to the end of June, finishing up this project. Any questions about that? No? All right. Well, we'll hope to see all of you on the second public meeting. And with that, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate, once again, taking time out of your schedule. And if you have any additional comments, please feel free to submit them online. We welcome it. So have a wonderful evening and take care.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it.